Today, I wanted to try to do a video to talk a little bit about collision. Now, in reality, when you try to walk through a wall, you can't because the wall is a solid object and, that has physical properties. But video games don't have that rule at all. The visuals that you see, the art that you see in a game engine is completely different than the collision, the thing that you run into in the game engine. And in each game engine, there is some way to control objects that you can't walk through, that might even be invisible, objects that you can sort of stand on, right? But the thing you stand on might not be the exact size and shape of the thing you're looking at. There's always a way to control this. In Big Bang, we use the entity properties panel to get at the collision. So let's open that now. Make sure your editor's in advanced mode, just in general when watching my tutorials, so that you see the same things that I do. Let's go over here and we'll select this object here, and we'll open the entity props panel at this side. So you'll see that there's different sort of sections here. We want the one that's purple. So it's right here and it says collision. Let's open that up. So if we look at it, it says that this object is set to collider voxel object, and that's the default of everything on the platform. And that means that the object will try to use the actual art for what you run into. And then if the object is too dense, like if there's too much detail, it'll default to a box. So in this case, we've got this wall scaled up quite big, and so I can jump through the window. So it's using the actual voxel collision of the art. But what if this was just a decorative window in your house and you didn't want someone to be able to do this, right? What if this is meant to be something more solid? Then you can go over here to the collision type and change it to box. Now, if I try to jump through that window, I can't, because it's not letting me walk through any part of that wall. That also means that up at the top, where the part of the triangle area is missing, where the roof would be, you wouldn't be able to walk through up there either, which in lots of games that would be fine, right? If you're not meant to be up high. In the case of something like grass, if I try to run into this looks like it's probably defaulted to box collision because I can stand on it here because it's small and detailed. And I don't actually really want to run into grass at all, right? Like, that's kind of weird. I should just be able to walk back and forth through little grass or bushes. So in that case, we go over to the collision section and we set it to none. Now I can just run freely back and forth through my grass and it won't interact with me at all. The next case I have here is another plant, but as I walk around this, you can see that it's defaulted to box collision because it's so detailed, and I just can't get close to it, right? Like, that doesn't look very good or very realistic at all. So let's pick that one. In this case, the solution most people would use is to go to either a box collider that's shrunk down to just the size of the trunk, or a capsule. So let's do a capsule. I quite like doing capsules for things like tree trunks and street posts and stuff, because it makes it a little easier to run around them because you're not hitting the edges. But you can see that it's still just as big as before, right? That's not very desirable. So let's make it smaller. So I gave it a radius of 3, and then I'll just make it kind of taller. It doesn't matter if it's the exact size, but now you can see I can walk right under the tree, but I can't walk through the trunk. So that's a much better collider shape for that object. Now, the stairs are an interesting case. They've been scaled up, so I am walking on them, but it feels kind of jerky. Like, if you were running through a building, that wouldn't feel like awesome movement. One of the things that's really commonly done in video games is to make sort of an invisible collider for certain shapes of objects that'll be easier to use. So I'm going to go to my scale tool and I'm going to just adjust this box till it's about the right size. And then I'm going to just move it. This is just a very small white cube that I've rescaled. The staircase is still a little steep, but you can see now I can run on there. So let's just shut off the collision on the original stairs. Okay, so I'm going to set that one to none. So now that I have my collider that I want to use for my stairs, I don't actually want my players to see the red box. So I'm going to go to up to the script section here, and I'm going to hit open, and I'm going to type gizmo. I'm just going to drop this script by Bradley, Control Z on it. That script is sort of like, it's a little bit more advanced to use a script, but you don't have to write it. You just drop it on. And all that script does is hide an object while the game is playing. And that means it lets you have invisible collision. So if I hit stop, you can see my red box is still there. And if I hit play, it vanishes. But if I go and I run up my stairs, I'm still walking on that invisible red box. And you can adjust the exact position of the box until it looks like your player is standing in the right spot for it, okay? So, okay, I'll go run up my stairs again. There, now it looks more like I'm on the surface of the stairs. Okay, so for the next little collision example here, we have a doorway. And because the doorway is quite detailed, it's defaulting to box collision like the tree did, so I can't actually walk through the door. Now, I could solve it the same way I did the stairs by shutting off collision on this door and then building boxes or something to fill in that space. But another choice is to just scale it up a little. So you see I've scaled this door up just a smidge more, and now the resolution isn't as dense and I can walk through the door. That's sort of the basics of collision shapes and some tricks you can use, but I wanted to mention a couple other things in the collision box before I go. So let's go back here to the collision and we'll look down at these other things. Collision layers are used sort of further into your game design journey when you want to say make it so enemies can only say collide with walls but not with something else that you have in your environment. Layers are basically used to control what types of things can collide with which other types of things, but that's a fairly advanced concept that you'll get into as you use game kits and things like that that require it. This other section here, this response type, this one's actually quite useful. So say in the case of this grass, say it had a script on it that let me interact with it to get a heart or something. In that case, if I shut off the collision, that object might actually stop working because it might have been using the collision to know that the player was next to it. So in cases like that, you would leave the collision on something simple like sphere, and then you would change it to be a trigger instead. And that would mean a script could know that the player was standing in the grass, but the player won't actually hit the grass. Water works this way. If you have a swimming pool, the water of the swimming pool needs to know that the player's in it, so the water's collision is set to trigger, and you'll see this all across Stop Big Bang. The other final thing that I should mention besides response types here is to be conscious of what shape the player is. So if I look at the player here, you'll see that I'm actually a capsule too, like the one that we put on the tree. That's part of why I might not always be able to fit through gaps that it looks like I can, because my personal collider on my player might actually be too big. Just be aware of that and roughly what size it is, so that when you're trying to make doors or boxes or whatever that the player can jump in, that you kind of understand how big the player is. Hope that's all helpful to you and you understand a bit more about collision now, and I can't wait to see what you make next.